Now, as a police officer, when I approached cars that were curious and I was not real sure about, I often had my weapon drawn, sometimes a shotgun even carried. So I was prepared. I was prepared for an eventuality. But sometimes we fail to be adequately prepared. And I want to tell you a little story about what happened to me recently. I was, as a business owner, concerned that there were trespassers on my property. And I was leaving for the weekend, and I had my cell phone in one hand, and I had a writing pad in the other. And I had just directed some people who were hiding behind my office to leave because it was private property, and they got up and left. But I observed another individual who was preparing to sleep in another area of my building. And so I walked over to him and said, "This is private property, you need to leave." As soon as I said those words, he got up, and I assumed that he would be compliant, right? Because my experience in dealing with these people over the last 4 or 5 years is that they are compliant. I had gotten into a routine in dealing with these people that foreclosed my ability to, in a quarter of a second, effectively respond to an attack, which is indeed what happened. So instead of leaving when he got up, he rushed me, okay? And when he rushed me, you remember, I have stuff in both hands, which is certainly foolish, okay? And I was not anticipating what would follow from his quickly approaching me, because it happened, his response time was already probably a full second or maybe two before I realized that he might be trouble. Now, I feel real comfortable in protecting myself. I do, I feel comfortable. I've been out and about for many decades and not had a problem ever coming out on top. But I'm 70 years old now. My reaction times are a little bit frayed, perhaps. But what's worse is that my ignorance in failing to perceive that any one of these circumstances could turn into something violent was a mistake. So when he approached and I had those things in my hand, think it takes a quarter of a second to go, I need to defend myself. Next motion, quarter of a second, drop what's in my hands, okay? By that time, he'd already struck me. I was on the ground, and he was then on top of me. So that happened really suddenly. The way to avoid this is to be prepared, to be observant, and to recognize that any encounter with a stranger can be deadly. And if you fail to recognize this, and given my experience, you would expect me to recognize this, but I had gotten comfortable in my role of simply telling the trespassers to leave when I should never have become complacent like that. I never would have done that as a police officer or as an FBI agent. But here, this is my property, my building. I'm figuring, I'm in charge here, and that he would simply be compliant. So I tell you now, there are 3 ways to learn things. The first is by reflection, where you sit down quietly and like a Buddhist monk, you think it through. The next is imitation. So you watch somebody else do it, you follow their rules and their recommendations, which I knew, and I tell other people, but I ignored that. But the best way I learned and why I'm telling you is through experience, and that clearly is the most painful.